What's going on, guys? My name is Richard Moglen, and welcome back to our weekly watch list video sponsored by MarketSmith. As always, we're going to run through the names that I'm watching for next week. Some of them look stronger than others. Some of them have already kind of broken out, but I'll talk through their charts, what I'm looking for, and also why I'm interested in the chart in the first place. So we're going to run through about 20 names today, keep a pretty fast pace. So let me know if you have any questions down below in the comment section, and let me know if there's any stocks that are not on this list that you're watching very carefully for next week. I definitely want to see your ideas as well. With that said, let's dive right in with BTU, Peabody Energy Corp. A lot of these names will be in the energy sector because that is really what's leading and breaking out into new all-time highs as of this moment. BTU suffered some distribution right here earlier in basically late April here, but it's kind of resetting and forming up the kind of right side of a base and chopping right near that 50-day moving average. We're back above a rising 21 EMA. So ideally we see some tightening action either with an inside day or just kind of intraday on a 65-minute time frame, and then we get a kind of breakout on volume, kind of continuing this move up towards all-time highs. So that's what I'm watching with BTU. Not the greatest growth numbers, but the overall chart and sector is really what's driving my interest in this name and the overall relative strength as well. You can see an RS rating of 99. Moving on, we've got Celsius, CELH. This is a name that I traded way back in 2020, 2021, a great performer for me. And now we've had this kind of extended base here. It's back above the rising anchor VWAP. If you've got that on your charts, we don't have that in MarketSmith, but it's good to see it get back above that kind of key sentiment level there. And now it's forming out a short-term flag right at the 200-day moving average. So I'm watching for a breakout through the short-term flag. We had a nice inside day on this past Friday. So I'm watching for a breakout through those highs on volume. And I like how kind of volume is dying a little bit within this flag as price tightens. So we'll have to see where this works. We do have some overhead supply to work through, and this is also a key level to consider to the upside. So that is CELH. Definitely as well, if you're into shorting and the market kind of falls apart next week or just see some distribution, you could also look for a break of the downside of this flag for a potential opportunity to the short side. But so far, this is above the moving averages, so holding up a lot better than most stocks, and definitely a name I'm watching basically going into next week. Moving on, we've got CNQ, which is another one of the oil and gas names that I'm watching carefully. We're in a stage 3 base here, really tight at this kind of point here, right below the overall base pivot. I'm watching for a break through these highs on volume, and I definitely want to see volume come in here. We've got an RS line, new high before price, and overall RS rating of 98, and nice uptrending RS line as the overall market is basically in a correction, bear market, whatever you want to call it. And you can keep it really simple. Look for stocks above their moving averages when the market is going down, and basically look for stocks that are trending above those moving averages when the market is below them. Moving on, we've got DO, which is an oil and gas recent IPO. Not the most liquid name. It's only about $8 a share, but if you like to play these kind of lower float names, this has a lot of potential. Nice volume coming in here. Big upside reversal on Friday. So this is probably the ideal buy point through this high. But maybe we get a tight day or tight intraday range right before it breaks through this 8.26 pivot, and then look for a quick move up here. And definitely this will be a fast mover. So move those stops up quickly. Take your gains if you've got them, and don't expect to just hold this for years and years. When the stock is kind of in this phase, in this kind of recent IPO phase, it's often best to use those quicker sell rules and protect that break-even point, and just kind of in general use smaller position sizes to deal with that potential volatility. So that is DO, Diamond Offshore Drill. Moving on, we've got EQT, which was a name I was watching back in this area here, and traded it as well. And now I'm watching for a pullback to this area. Maybe we let that 21 EMA kind of catch up to price. It flags out here and then pushes up off and kind of resumes the uptrend through 50. But I love to see it kind of go sideways below that 50 mark and then reconfirm the upside on volume. FLNG is the next stock on this list. RS new high before price, great RS rating 98, and it did have a breakout last week. I missed this one right through that 50 SMA. Nice action, as well as kind of breaking through this pivot. Now we're kind of consolidating right at that 30 level. So if we get some tight days here on declining volume, that'd be extremely constructive. And then I'm looking for kind of reconfirmation to the upside, breaking through this high. And basically, I want to see it progress towards that overall all-time high at 32.77. But once again, this is a potential leading stock within an overall strong industry group and sector. So that is FLNG. Moving on, we've got GFS, which is one of the semiconductors I'm watching, and this is also a group that kind of progressed well last week. We have AMD, NVIDIA as kind of the liquid leaders here. GFS has been showing nice relative strength recently, as you can see from that relative strength line trend. And now we're consolidating above a rising 21 EMA after it broke through this kind of consolidation pivot. Still a lot of overhead supply to work through, as well as the 60 mark, but I'm watching for a big volume move through these areas right here. So that is GFS, definitely a name I'm watching closely. Promising IPO, nice IPO, actually fun ownership for an IPO. That's what I wanted to say. And overall, definitely an interesting chart to look at if we can get through this overhead supply. Although I do believe it's basically through its anchor view out from all-time highs. I believe kind of popped through that right when it burst through this pivot right here. Moving on, we've got GLNG, which is once again an oil and gas name. A nice action near all-time highs right at the top of this base. We had a failed breakout, kind of a reset. Nice upside reversal here on Friday, so I'm watching for continuation here and a re-breakthrough through that 26.60 pivot. Great earnings last quarter and an overall super strong chart, progressing from 15 to 26 in just a matter of weeks. So a lot of potential with this one, but as with all of these, you've got to manage risk no matter if you take the setup or not. Moving on, we've got GOGL, one of the shippers on this list, already kind of broke out through its base. You had another consolidation right here, but it's kind of setting up another kind of short-term swing trade opportunity through these highs. A nice inside day, consolidation day on Friday. So I'm watching for reconfirmation breakout here through that level, through 16 and into those all-time highs. Great relative strength as the overall shipping group has been super strong. As you can see, the overall group is ranked 10 out of 197. We've got a few other names on this list that are from the same group. And yeah, definitely a name if you're interested in kind of short-term moves, more swing trading style versus position trading. So that is GOGL. Moving on, we've got another shipper, GRIN. And overall, kind of within its space here, consolidating, very choppy here, but I'm watching for a push through this area on volume, which pretty much lines up with the majority of this base. And overall, I'd love to see maybe one tight inside day on very low volume, then the breakout. That would be ideal, but definitely a name I'm watching, although I would like to see it trend and kind of change character from this choppy back and forth action. It looks like there's basically some sellers up in this area. Moving on, we've got IMXI. Not really a leading group here, but an interesting chart here, especially once again for those kind of swing trader type setups. You've got a nice pivot right at this area. Decline in volume the past two kind of consolidation days, pretty tight on the hourly 65-minute time frame. And I'm watching for a breakout through these basically highs on volume, and that could start a nice move towards that all-time high mark. So IMXI, nice price and volume action, strong stock above a rising 21 EMA, RS rating in 96. And it just broke out of that stage 1B base. Yeah, just watching those pivots, and I want to see volume come in as well. Moving on, we've got Lrn Stride Inc. And overall, really nice tight action here right below 40. Inside day on Friday, I'm watching for a breakthrough these highs on volume and then a continuation move ideally through this base pivot. Really low volume here the past few days. And yeah, definitely just an overall nice chart pattern to watch. You can see it's stage 2C base, and the standard pivot is at 41.2, but I'm looking to get in a little bit earlier, right near that 40 mark. So that is Stride Inc. Definitely one to watch here. Murphy Oil, another oil and gas name, had an ascending base that kind of broke down and then recovered and is setting up kind of right below those all-time highs. A little bit straight off the bottom here, so maybe we get a one-day shakeout. That would be ideal, and then a continuation here and breakout through these levels on volume. Once again, super strong relative strength during this correction, as with this basically entire group. So that is Murphy. Moving on, we've got ON Semiconductor, another name I'm watching pretty closely within this group. A really nice action last week. You could have bought it through this area as it kind of came off that 200-day 50 SMA, 21 EMA confluence, then also kind of reconfirmation here. A nice tight inside day. So ideally we get a little bit of a flag out, then you can buy the reconfirmation. Or if it just kind of moves up towards the top of this base, consolidates and forms a handle, then you could buy it on the kind of Stinner breakout. But definitely a name I'm watching pretty closely with an overall stage 2 base and in a group that, although it's not ranked super highly, the overall kind of sector, semiconductors, has been showing relative strength recently over the past 2 weeks. So that is ON. And moving on, we've got PLab within that same space. Super strong at the bottom here, so I need a proper setup. So I'd love to see a pullback consolidation. I'll let those moving averages catch up a bit, and then a reconfirmation breakout on high volume And ideally, this kind of sideways action is on very low relative volume. So that is PLAB, definitely a name I'm interested in because of the super strong action on volume and overall super strong relative strength. So that is PLAB. Next up, we've got RRC, Range Resources Corp. A nice action, tight flag here. I'm watching for a breakout through these highs. Super low volume the past 2 days and an overall strong trend. A nice action above the moving averages. SLCA forming a base here. A little bit weak within this flag. I would like to see this kind of go sideways versus kind of droop down right at that 21 EMA, but maybe we get a push up, then another tight inside day, and then a pop through that 50 SMA. And basically I'm watching for a breakout on volume through this kind of general area as it forms this base after a super strong move off the bottom here of this nice long base and overall strong action versus the rest of the market. Next up, we've got TMDX and overall nice upside reversals the past few days off those moving averages, nice long base as well. It is pretty far off of all-time highs if we go over to a weekly chart, but is forming out a nice kind of consolidation area here. And overall, I'm watching for a breakout kind of through this general area and ideally progressing through that 31 area and getting back above that 35 area eventually if it decides to trend. Overall, nice relative strength at 95, which is pretty impressive given this kind of underperformance recently and big signs of accumulation, this big upside reversal, as well as the gap up on earnings. So this HVC is also a key pivot to watch. And overall, that's what I'm looking for with TMDX. Moving on, we've got VET, another energy name, forming out a nice kind of short-term flag here right below the standard pivot. A nice inside day on a decline in volume. So I'm watching for a nice burst through this on volume and ideally progressing into all-time highs with a strong close as well. A really nice trend prior to this overall stage 3 base and nice depth as well and nice formation of this overall consolidation. So that is VET. And lastly, we've got Zim, another shipper, forming out a nice little handle here. So I'm watching for a push with this on volume, and I like the decline in volume overall in this handle. This day does give me a little bit of pause, but it did recover and hold that 21 EMA area. So I'm watching for kind of reconfirmation to the upside through these highs. So overall, that's pretty much my list for this upcoming week. Let me know your thoughts on these names. What are kind of your top 3 here? List them down below in the comments. And if you're still watching this point, make sure to leave a like down below and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And I'll see you guys in future videos. Thanks.